She's sulking because I went out on a Meteor. Hey up and welcome back to Appleyards in Keighley. Today I'll be taking out the Royal Enfield Meteor 350 for a bit of a test ride. So thanks to Appleyards for loaning me this bike for a couple of hours. If you've not been down here before and you're in this neck of the woods, get yourself down to Appleyards Motorcycles. Very friendly, very knowledgeable, very helpful staff. Bags and bags of stock, both old and new, and plenty of demo bikes to ride. What's not to like? So get yourself down to Appleyards in Keighley. All right, let's crack on and get out on the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. Right, okay, so let's get out on the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. I mean, this here bike here is my own Royal Enfield Classic 350. Absolutely love it to bits. Obviously, the Meteor 350 uses exactly the same engine, the J series single cylinder engine, but it's a very, very different style bike indeed, as you can probably see. But it's probably worth at this point, before we venture out, just to sort of get a comparative impression of the two bikes. They are born of the same DNA. Of course, the Meteor 350 was the first Royal Enfield motorcycle to feature the new J series engine. And that was followed by the Classic there, and most latterly by the Royal Enfield Hunter 350, which I took out a few weeks ago. Go back and have a look at that. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, and the first thing that fills me with trepidation is that heel and toe gear shifter there. The only other bike on which I had one of those was a Triumph Rocket 3 Touring, and I was forever inadvertently knocking it into gear with my heel at the most inappropriate of circumstances. So I'm going to have to be a bit careful. If this were my bike, that'd be getting chopped off, but each to their own. Alright, let's crack on. Let's do a bit of traffic through Keighley first off. Okay, and of course a very, very, very familiar sound for me from that single cylinder thumper. Forward controls, but not that forward. The rest fairly straightforward, and we'll go through the instrumentation, etc. on the walk around. Okay, let's crack on. So let's do a bit of traffic through Keighley first, see what the fueling's like, handling. And I noticed that the engine light's on. Now, I have heard it said, anecdotally, that Royal Enfields do like occasionally to throw up an engine light, which often rectifies itself, but see how we get on. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, the instrumentation there, and you'll see the Royal Enfield tripper navigation system on the right hand side, and on the left the pretty much the same speedometer and integrated LCD displays you'll find on the Scram 411 and on the Hunter 350. It's very different on the Classic, of course. And no issues with the fueling at all. Very smooth, very linear, very progressive. And of course, it's a given that pretty much any bike of these proportions really is ideally suited to being a commuter. Now, of course, the default position for the commuter version of this bike would be the Hunter 350. But that said, if you're into the cruiser style, then this bike would be a stylistic option as a daily commuter for you. Certainly at about 100 miles per gallon claimed and a 15 litre fuel tank, you could commute all day long. And if you look at the leg position down there, I don't know if you can see my legs there, they're probably at 45 degrees at the knee. But it's hardly what you would call a laid back Harley style, so it's not quite as pronounced a forward foot position as perhaps you would associate with a bigger cruiser. Of course, to be fair, the bike itself is not big enough to accommodate sitting back like you're riding a deck chair. Now, the thing with these, and it's a bit of an elephant in the room really, but you need to know about it if you don't already, is the single cylinder Royal Enfields. And obviously I speak as a classic 350 owner from new, and having had a Scram 411 from new as well. And it applies to both bikes, but more so to the 350, and that is they take a lot of running in. Now, of course, none of the bikes in the 350 range has a rev counter. So for example, with the Interceptor, you get told not to go above 4,000 RPM for the first 300 miles, and then not above 5,000 RPM for the next, or rather up to 2,000 kilometres or 1,200 miles. So like a two-stage running in process. There's no rev counter on this bike. Now, it's not an issue on the Royal Enfield Interceptor or the Continental GT, because at 4,000 RPM in top gear, which is 6 gear on those bikes, you're at 60 mile an hour. And for the second part of the running in period after the first service, 5,000 RPM in 6 gear, you're at 70 miles per hour. But it's a different kettle of fish with these here single cylinder J series engines, and it's more of a problem if you live in a hilly area like obviously I do, and you are limited in terms of maximum speed for each respective gear, and it's lower than you might think. And where that becomes a bit of an issue is if you're going up a steep hill, because you probably find yourself in a situation where the guidance in the handbook dictates a maximum speed in a certain gear, and therefore to get beyond something like say 20 mile per hour on a steep hill, you find yourself in a gear which is far too high for that engine to propel you up that gradient. So you're going to have to drop down, and either that or crawl up the hill at 10 mile an hour. As I say, it's only really or should I say, it's more acutely an issue in a hilly area like this. But this bike's pretty well running from what I can gather, so I mean we don't have those issues today. But if you're going to buy one from new, just bear in mind, particularly if you live in a hilly area, certainly the first 300 mile you're just going to have to be really steady. Perhaps try and avoid the steepest hills. Yeah, so for example, if we were just running this bike in now, you see we're going up this steep hill, 25 mile an hour in third gear, and at some point on that gradient the bike's going to struggle in third gear, requiring you to drop down to second gear, at which point, in all likelihood, you'll be going significantly above the maximum recommended speed for the gear during the running in period. So, I mean, it's not a showstopper, not by any stretch of the imagination is a showstopper, but it's just something which really you need to be aware of if you're going to buy one of these bikes from new, that they need to be cosseted for the first 1200 miles, and they need to be super cosseted for the first 300 miles, and then you can let go. But I have to say, my classic 350 is now on about 800 miles, and it's just a different bike altogether to what it was when I first got it. So please persevere. It's absolutely worth it, because of the character of this engine is well worth that effort. Pulling like a train on these switchbacks. Lots of torque from these single cylinder engines, of course, so it's all about the mid-range performance. But in the real world, that's exactly the sort of performance that you need. Be absolutely perfect for touring this bike without a shadow of a doubt. I know you can get aftermarket luggage options. Got a couple of panniers on the back there, and off you go. And they're a very easygoing, minimum effort, pack your bags, throw your leg over and go bike. And that's what I love about these Royal Enfield singles. They are just effortless. And this bike will top out at just over 70 miles per hour, should you wish to do that, and cruise all day long at between 60 and 70. No effort. I think the only situations in which this would require of you some intelligent thought and planning before executing an overtake, for example, would be if you're on a really fast road. You know, say you're on a 60 mile an hour road and somebody's doing 55 miles an hour and you need to get past, and there's the danger of oncoming traffic. You just need to plan carefully. But your ability to plan in that regard will certainly benefit from your experience of running in the engine, because you'll get to know all about what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, where it can excel and where it requires a little bit of cosseting. Right, let's test the brakes. Nothing behind, and front brake. Hey, pretty good. Better than my classic, that, I would say. And rear brake. Nothing behind. Almost as good. So pretty much like the Hunter 350 brakes. But I always say with these Royal Enfields, it's better to get into the habit of using both brakes for maximum braking effect. It's what you should be doing anyway. I suppose in terms of who this bike would appeal to, well, it appeals to me. Obviously I prefer the classic. But a bike, you know, a bike that tops out at above the national speed limit, that returns about 100 miles to the gallon, that's cheap to maintain, tax and insure, that comes in at less than £4,000 there or thereabouts, new on the road. That appeals to me. If you're a young chap or chapess and you want something with a bit of style, and you like the cruiser style, and you're riding on A2, or you've just passed your test and this is your first quote-unquote full-size motorcycle, this has enough style and cachet to appeal to the most fashion conscious, or even the most fashion conscious of the younger generation of motorcyclists. Let's do the walk around. Right, so here we are then, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. A bonny looking cruiser styled motorcycle. And so let's talk a few numbers for you, for those of you that are interested. And starting at the front of the bike and looking at the brakes, what we have at the front is a 320mm single disc with a twin piston Bibrake caliper, Bibrake being a subsidiary of Brembo. The front wheel there you can see is 19 inches and it's a cast alloy wheel running tubeless tyres, and the suspension at the front that you can see there, the forks are 41mm forks with 130mm of travel, and they're not adjustable. Go round to the rear of the bike, and the brake there is a 270mm single disc with a single piston caliper. Obviously ABS on the bike there, and suspension wise we have twin rear shock absorbers which are 6-stage adjustable for preload, so just the preload adjustment there on the rear suspension, no damping or compression adjustment, just the preload. And the wheel at the back there is a 17-inch cast alloy wheel, tubeless tyre again, and the tyres typically with Royal Enfields are Seat, an Indian brand, and I've never had any issues with these tyres. They tend to be on the 350 models of the Seat Zoom Cruise tyres, and I found them absolutely fine in both the dry and the wet. We'll have a look at the seat. That's just over 760mm in height, and as you can see there you have an ample pillion seat complete with backrest. Single exhaust silencer there, and lovely stylish retro chrome finish, and a lovely sound coming out of that stock exhaust, it has to be said. Nice premium looking Royal Enfield logo on the back of the seat there. Now the engine is the J series engine. It's a single cylinder, single overhead cam, 4-stroke engine, developing 20 brake horsepower and pretty much 20 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM. So yeah, 20 brake horsepower and 20 foot-pound of torque. And I'll just wait for that aircraft. We're just downwind of Leeds Bradford Airport, so bear with me. Okay, and as you can see on this model, like the Hunter, but unlike the Classic 350, we have the black powder coated engine casings. A lot easier on maintenance than the polished alloy ones on the Classic 350. They're each unto their own. You get, as standard, a centre stand, which is excellent. And as you can see there, the infamous toe heel gear shifter, so much loved of cruiser motorcycles. I'm not overly fond of them. The last bike I had with that arrangement was a Triumph Rocket 3 Touring, and had a nasty habit of going into second gear at the most inappropriate of times, because I just kept catching that the heel shifter there. But you'd get used to it without a shadow of a doubt, but it wouldn't be for me, wouldn't that? Okay, so that's the engine, a chain drive, and first service is at 300 miles on this bike, and that includes checking the valve clearances, and subsequent services are recorded as being at every 6,000 miles or 1 year, whichever comes first. But if this were my bike, if I was doing more than 3,000 miles in 1 year, I'd be getting the service done at 3,000 mile, but that's just me. Okay, so let's have a look up top. 15 litre fuel tank, reported 100 plus miles per gallon, so in theory, best part of a 300 mile range on a tank. Usual Mickey Mouse style mirrors, perfectly adequate for the job, excellent view behind. If you're into bar end mirrors, no reason why you couldn't swap those around. They're not for me. And the instrumentation, as you can see there, analog speedometer on the left with the LCD insert, and in the LCD insert there you'll see you get a clock, you get a gear position indicator, you get the odometer, and you get 2 trip meters, and you cycle between them using this button here. On the right hand side you can see the Royal Enfield basic tripper navigation system, which I found works exceptionally well with my iPhone, but when I had an Android phone, the one on my Scram refused to play. Or maybe it was the phone that refused to play. So people have mixed experiences with that, but I find certainly with my iPhone, absolutely spot on, no problem. Switch gear fairly standard. It's the same switch gear that you'll get on the Classic and on the Hunter and on the Super Meteor for that matter. So here on the right hand side we have the starter and kill switch assembly, the hazard warning lights, and on the left hand side you have the headlight, main beam and pass, the indicators and horn, and that information cycle button there for the LCD. The levers are non-adjustable for span, adequate for the job, but I think I'd be upgraded those to something a little bit more stylish and a little bit more adjustable. Coming round to the front, standard halogen headlight and fairly standard orange indicators front and rear. So okay, that's the bike, so let's take a look at me sat upon it. Right, okay. So I am 6'1" with a 32 going on 33 inside leg. As you can see, I'm easily flat-footing on the bike. It has a seat height of, as I said, just over 760 millimeters. So, you know, even if you're sort of 5'4", 5, 6, 7, you're not going to have a problem with this bike at all. Typical cruiser style. The riding position is somewhat feet forward, but not excessively so. Really, really comfortable seat. You could ride in this position all day long. There's nothing uncomfortable about it at all. And in the last sort of 45 minutes or so, I've not experienced the lower back discomfort that some people associate with cruiser style bikes with forward controls. None of that whatsoever. Yeah, you could tour on this bike effortlessly, and it's a stylish little thing. And the quality of this range of bikes, of course, the Meteor 350, this bike was the Royal Enfield's first model to come out with this new J Series engine, followed by the Classic, and then followed by the Hunter 350. And on all three bikes, you can tell that there's been an uptick in the quality of the fit and finish. And certainly it's very apparent on this bike, as it is on the Super Meteor 650, which I tested a few videos back, if you want to have a look at that. You know, what's not to like really, if you're in the market for a mid-size or small to mid-size cruiser motorcycle, if you're into that style of motorcycle and you're looking for something that's reliable, got a good reputation, looks well, rides well, and is highly affordable in terms of the initial capital outlay, £4,000 there or thereabouts, probably less. There are a lot of deals out there at the moment, and running costs really as economical as any bike of this size and capacity is ever going to be. So don't be fooled into thinking that a 20 horsepower single cylinder engine is not going to provide you with an enjoyable and rewarding and fulfilling rider experience, because it will. It's all about your expectations level, and if your expectations are not ridiculous and you've done your homework and you know the kind of bike that you're after, then you will not be disappointed. I would suggest with any of the Royal Enfields, because in terms of bang for your buck, they're about as good as it gets out there. Super. Yep, love this. I'd be happy with one. But I got the Classic. But you got the choice of the three bikes, haven't you? You know, three very individual and distinct styles of what's essentially the same motorcycle. Yeah, you'd be happy doing your CBT obstacle course with this, wouldn't you? In between cones and what have you. Yeah, no problem with low speed manoeuvring whatsoever. Very, very agile bike, very stable, very well balanced. Not enough weight to catch you unawares. Bang on. Super, let's crack on. So, before we drop this bike back off at Appleyard, let's just see what she's like on faster roads. So we're just going to drop on to the Air Valley Trunk Road, which is a 50 and then a 70 limit. Of course, the only problem with this road is it's in dire need of redressing. Just look at the striation marks in this tarmac. Right, okay, so into the Nationals, and we're in 5th, top gear. I'll steadily wind her back and see if that claimed 73 miles per hour is anything like reasonable. Yep. Nice and stable. There we are, an indicated 70 miles per hour. And the throttle is wide open. Yeah, it's pretty much there or thereabouts. I mean, it's not screaming at 70 in 5th. And it may well be that if we were on an uphill gradient in a 70 limit, we might not quite get there. But if you were worried about being able to keep up with motorway or dual carriageway traffic, in normal real world circumstances on a bike like this? Would he not? Because it's eminently capable of doing just that. And there's no undue vibration or sense that the bike is absolutely caning itself. It's just a dignified and respectable climb to 70 miles per hour. And then even on this somewhat windy day, impeccable manners. Yeah, Royal Enfield Meteor 350 commuter bike, Sunday scratcher, tourer, and of course cruiser, all crammed into one very affordable package with a high standard of fit and finish, a stylish overall look, yet a very contemporary riding feel. And ticks a number of boxes, I would suggest, whether you're an experienced biker who already has a bigger bike or two. This would make an excellent additional bike at minimal additional outlay. If you're a newly qualified rider, it's the perfect choice. And whether your style is cruiser or classic or commuter would depend upon whether you choose the Meteor, the classic or the Hunter. But they would make any of them absolute common sense for somebody in that category. And the fun factor alone is worth every penny to my mind, because these bikes put a smile on your face. They really do. They're just so effortless. Anyway, so as we wind our way back to Appleyards, it only remains for me to thank once again Lewis and Kieran and Mikey there and the whole team for lending me this bike for a couple of hours so that I can just give you my impressions of what she's all about. And yes, if I didn't already have a classic 350, I'd be more than happy to have a Meteor 350 or a Hunter 350 for that matter. So okay then, hope that was of some interest to you. If it was, please click a like, please click a subscribe. If you get a chance, you're in this neck of the woods, come down to Appleyards, get yourself a pot of steam and have a look at some of their fantastic bikes. And until then, ride safe, be kind, don't catch COVID, and I'll see you on the next one. Toodle pip.